I love you.
I love you too. American Horror Story is psychological horror.
Mommy.
There's something there, and it's alluring, but it's also scary.
Every episode, we're going to be discovering something new about these characters.
You don't know what's going on. It's scary, it's spooky, it'll mess with your head.
She's still moving.
It's fearless. It really, really goes to the jugular.
People are scared of it. People are terrified to watch it.
Wake up!
The story is really about these characters and they're faced with their greatest fears.
I had a really great time too.
It's definitely a thriller. It's definitely horror, but it's also really, really cerebral.
I'm a pretty girl.
There are forces at work here that might not be readily recognizable.
The babies are coming!
But they are symbolic of the forces at work in this world now.
You're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it.
In action!
It's a classic LA Victorian, built around 1920 by the doctor to the stars at the time.
Ryan and I, we both love horror movies, and the idea of doing horror on TV and the darkness of it was sort of really exciting to us. Whenever we do anything like this, Ryan sort of has a lot of really big ideas, like The Rubber Man, The House, Infidelity. And we just started talking, and just a matter of a couple weeks, I think, we wrote the pilot.
Excuse me. You are going to die in there.
When I first read the pilot, I was so excited because I thought this is fresh and this is new and this is exciting. I was really, really looking forward to how Ryan Murphy was going to build out this fantasy world that he had created.
Why are you in my house?
I read all the scripts prior to starting to shoot the show. What was interesting, it wasn't just the horror or the supernatural element. There was also a tremendous emotional undercurrent I think every single person can relate to outside of the horror element.
Hey, this is my husband, Ben. I certainly thought it was an incredibly interesting, very unusual story, and it would be pretty cool to be a part of.
Please! You have to get out of there. That place is evil!
I read it and I was like, whoa, whoa. You know, it's really out there in a really brave, challenging, cool way.
FX was really excited about the idea of the horror show, and I think that they saw that there was an area that hadn't been really explored on TV, and it's a very popular area. There was never a moment where we got any doubt from like, do you think you can do horror on TV? It was always very much like, yes, TV needs horror, and FX is just the place for it.
I love it.
Great. It's for the Addams family now.
Ultimately, I think that it's an American story, certainly, of a family that's torn apart.
We meet Vivian and her family at a crisis point. She has recently had a miscarriage and was a really brutal, brutal experience. On top of that, she walks in on her husband having an affair.
I'm sorry. No.
It's really a double whammy.
I guess these guys were into the kinky stuff, huh? Should I try it on?
It's not funny.
I think it looked good.
Holy shit.
Ben and Violet and Vivian are our heroes of the show. I think they are the ones struggling to do good in a difficult world, and I just think it's a struggle. I think they are really all good people. I mean, you look at Ben and you say, well, how could he be a good person? He does such awful things to his family. But I think he is a good person who just really, like everybody, struggles.
How long are you gonna punish me for?
I'm not punishing you, you narcissistic asshole.
Ben is an interesting guy because he's a psychiatrist himself, but I think that he probably needs more therapy than anybody else in the house. He's really, really struggling and fighting. He's trying to overcome the psychological demons that are inside of him.
Let me tell you who's dangerous. That would be me. You really want to keep going with this story, Larry? Because I'm right at the edge!
Ben certainly is in such turmoil within himself about who he is and who his family is to him and his wife is to him.
I think he loves his wife enormously. I think he's trying to stay in this marriage. I think he's trying to be that guy that maybe his father was for him.
I'm not leaving this house. And I'm not giving up on this family.
Ben could easily be terribly unlikable. And so you need to cast somebody who, even when they went into the darkness, you still had an affection for. And I think Dylan has that. He has the ability to really be very, very dark without being unlikable.
This is a great role for Dylan. course, my character is dealing with some serious issues with him. It must be so great to be able to do that, to just flick a switch and be able to justify your own bad behavior.
My family comes first.
Since when?
In any relationship, once the trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to fix it. And the trust is broken. And we're trying. There's this deep, deep connection we have with each other, and I'm not sure that we could survive without each other. And I think that we're kind of walking that line of enormous love and enormous hurt. And sometimes, you know, with love comes hurt.
Don't make me feel like I'm crazy. What's interesting to me about Vivian is that I do see her as a very strong character. I see her as a woman who has had real control over her life.
We're selling this house.
Suddenly, that isn't working anymore.
My mind is playing tricks on me more.
I think that even if you haven't gone through the sort of serious issues that her family, that Vivian's family is going through, just the idea of things in your life not happening exactly as you imagine that they would or think that they should, and confronting that in yourself. For me, it's fun to play. You have no idea how long I've been wanting to do that.
I think for an audience, especially in a show like this that's going to challenge what they can handle, you want somebody in there that they feel like, okay, I can totally believe in this person, I can be with this person.
You just always surprise me. I like that.
As soon as I met with Connie, I knew that we had this instant rapport with each other. I think that carries over certainly to the show. We have to trust each other completely because our scenes are somewhat sexual in nature, and we have to touch each other and kiss each other and be intimate, and, you know, all these things that are difficult in life, never mind, you know, on screen.
He looks just like you. Especially his hair.
Instantly, we fell into this trust with each other and belief, you know, that we are these people.
Full disclosure requires that I tell you about what happened to them.
Oh, God. They didn't die in here or anything, did they?
Yes, actually, both of them.
Where did it happen?
The basement.
We'll take it. Violet's a really strong character. She's a fun character to play, but she has her issues. She has a lot of disappointments in life, and she's trying to deal with that her ways. I thought you hated each other. Well, at least you hated him. I don't blame you. He was a shithead.
I think that Violet is very smart, and I think that she sees things. Our relationship, again, is complex, too, because she's aware of this affair that I had.
I'm saying Mom's crazy, and it's your fault. You drove her crazy.
What's interesting about Violet is that she's not really scared of anything. And the thing that's interesting is that she's able to actually maneuver between the worlds of the ghost world and the real world.
Don't you dare me, Violet!
I had no idea that I was going to die. These things start happening, but it's not confirmed or denied for so long. But I thought she was dead. But nobody told me I had to read the script. I had to wait until I got it. And when I found it, I screamed. I was like, I knew it. I was so happy to find out. I called it.
If you love someone, you should never hurt them. Never.
Right? I know. She meets him, and there's a connection. I mean, she doesn't trust anybody. I mean, especially her parents. And then Tate comes along, and he starts to sympathize with her, and he understands, and he listens to her, and that's a big thing.
It's fine now. I'm here. Some of them beg for their life. I don't feel sad. I don't feel anything. It's a filthy world we live in.
Can I help you?
It's a filthy, goddamn helpless world.
He's a total psychopath. So, it comes from no remorse, no empathy, no compassion. But he does love Violet, so...
Do you believe in ghosts?
Why are you asking me? Tate's dark. Violet's attracted to the darkness. You know, she says she's not scared of anything, but, you know, she is.
Tate always has a reason to kill people. I mean, he's always trying to either protect Violet or be with Violet.
I used to think you were like me. You were attracted to the darkness. But Tate, you are the darkness.
Tate's someone, I think, who grew up in a place that was a struggle, but he was predisposed for the darkness and for the evil. He got a lot of help from his mom.
What is wrong with you?
I have to say that I always adored Jessica Lange. She's creating this character that's just so compelling.
That girl is a monster. I love her, and I'm a good Christian, but Jesus H. Christ. I think Constance is an unorthodox character in the sense that she doesn't fit these kind of ideas of what a good mother is.
Look at yourself.
I think she's a throwback to another time where people weren't all that concerned about, is this the correct way in the eyes of society at this moment?
I think there isn't a closed door in the world that beauty can't open.
She already lost everything that's important to her, including her sense of morality and her values and everyone she's ever cared about.
Most people would be broken by the death of their children, but my nature would not permit such weakness.
She just has great regret, and it drives her to do certainly somewhat unspeakable things.
I was and continue to be a hell of a shot.
The house is evil, now you want to buy it.
That's goddamn right. I need that house.
The star of the show is the house. That's what it's all about. This house and what happens in that house and what it does to people.
There's some evil, there's some darkness present in the house, and I mean, you walk in and you can feel it.
What's in this basement? I want the truth.
What I'm about to tell you might scare you to death.
I can take it.
The house is a character, and then it's surrounded by all of these other characters that are impacted by the house or making an impact on the house in some way.
The force here in this house is larger than the many individual traumas.
That's very interesting. But what do we do about the gays? I mean, how do we get rid of them? The house has a tremendous presence. It's housing many, 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 many secrets.
It has layers and layers of history and life and death in it, and everybody who steps into this house and becomes involved is bound to it forever, for good or for bad.
I think all the great horror movies, they have iconic imagery, and the house really has that iconic quality to it.
Our tour concludes with one of the most famous houses of horrors in the City of Angels, better known as the Murder House.
The exterior of the house is a location house down in mid-city area of LA. It's kind of a wonderful house, finished in 1907. It's an odd place. I mean, it was essentially a nunnery or a convent for a while, which I think is always interesting because you get this idea of sacred and profane in one place.
I loved the original house. When I walked up to that house, I was like, wow, can I live here?
Ryan Murphy, our director, was very clear about wanting a house that had enormous character. We scouted, and as soon as Ryan came into this house, he immediately felt that it was the vibe that was right for him and was right for the story.
When we went to bring the sets home to the stages here at Paramount, you have to now translate that into physical terms that can be shot easily, and walls have to move so you can get in and out with cameras and that sort of thing.
And action, slowly burn.
The basement is the epicenter, I think, of whatever evil spirit or force is in the house. The original house did have this basement, but it was a little flat. So when we came back to the stage, we added a lot of windows and some nooks and crannies that give it a lot more sort of depth, almost sort of a catacomb feel or a crypt feel. Pretty much all of the interiors are here on stage. Ryan refers to it, I think, as house porn. What we do in the Harmon house to make it sort of cool, sexy, attractive.
Nice, right? Tiffany lamps and everything. There's even an office so I can see patients at home. I mean, it's perfect.
When I first got hired by Ryan, one thing he said to me was, it's Prada, not Versace. It's going to be a really clean, simple, kind of modern sensibility rather than like very elaborate, and it wasn't like highly fanciful or any of that. It's more about like very iconic, interesting shaped pieces and a lot of space around them. In fact, so much so that it was challenging because there was so little in the sets. He wanted it so minimal. It didn't tell hardly anything in a weird way, which is actually what he wanted.
You think I came all the way here from Philadelphia for this? This life? This house?
I built you this house exactly the way you wanted it.
You need to know the house's backstory, the same way you'd want to know what made any character what they are.
The flashbacks and the way those are edited together are really what help convey the character of the house. As you see a continuity of the occurrences and what happens to the different people that have been in the house, it becomes less random and more clear that there's some power at work.
Charles! For God's sake!
I'm working!
The thing is that time doesn't exist for ghosts. And so when something happens in the 1920s or 1930s to a living character and then they die, that story is still being told by that ghost in present day, as far as they're concerned, because that's their life.
Dr. Harmon?
Excuse me, did we have an appointment?
I was told there was a doctor here who might help me.
Because the show jumped back and forth between periods of time, we wanted to make sure that audiences could really definitively and concisely know what time period they were in. So we had built almost like a roadmap of the visuals for each period of time and what it would entail and how we would approach it.
I've bisected her body, removed the intestines, and drained her blood. Why? I think you will find these pieces more portable.
Anytime when you can do contemporary and then combining other periods is very rewarding. For a costume designer, it has an enormous amount of design possibilities. When we start with a character like this, especially because it's based on somebody in real life, and when I was doing the fitting with Mina, we kept saying if things were too beautiful, it was like, oh, we've lost the dime store quality about this girl because she hasn't made it yet as a movie star. So we tried to find things that were interesting and beautiful, but still felt cheap.
I don't know how else to pay you. I know you're the one who can help me. I can tell.
You really have to have a strong foundation in costume history because we have to do it so quickly, especially when you only have moments on camera to try and show somebody from 1927 or 68. All those time periods, you've got to, as soon as that character walks on screen, subliminally the audience should know, oh, that's the 20s, that's the 30s, that's the 40s.
No, Thaddeus, go away!
And playing with time, we all thought was a vital way to tell a ghost story. Also, it allowed us to show some great horror.
Scream, Connie, will you? One more. And cut. Take that. That's great.
With a new show, you're always sort of trying to find what is the show. We know what it is on the page, and we know what it is that Ryan wants, but you have 1,000 different voices adding to that story as you shoot it.
Action, Brennan.
We have great directors who are really creative visually, and what we like to do is bring people like that in and make sure they understand the tone, but give them the freedom to sort of play.
Every director who worked on the show brought a unique approach to the story that they were telling. Every single one of them brought elements to the show that became the style of American Horror Story.
And cut. Great. Okay.
Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk definitely set a unique tone on this show. It was a tone that was established early on. They encouraged me to take it and go farther and to really run with it. The first idea that you come up with to light a scene is going to be the most generic. So I always try to reach for the second idea, and the second idea is always harder to find because it's in the back of your head. But it's going to be inherently the more interesting one to watch, and that's how we approached every scene in the show.
The hood's fully detachable. The harness has anchor points for bondage.
Forgive me, I don't get any of this at all.
The point of the suit's to dehumanize a submissive.
This whole piece for us was very much about sex and sexuality. It's very much talking about the dangers of giving in to your base instincts and your base needs.
Oh, that can be kinky.
Even the rubber man is so eerie. And there is, even when we shot it, there was some question about who's really inhabiting the rubber man,
I think the idea of it is very sort of erotic. Faceless sex object. I mean, that can only be purely carnal. There's no emotion driving that. And I don't know, it's kind of hot.
Oh, it's weird. It's really, wow, pretty weird. Kind of sexy too, because it's form-fitting, but weird.
What happened to their sex scene? Rubberman and Moira. Where did that go? I gotta get on the phone with Ryan.
Action! So everything is very script-driven. There wasn't an agenda of visual effects. The story was going to kind of pull us all along.
Fuse Effects always understood that less is more, and that we didn't need to have 1,000 effects to make it work. We just needed to have a handful of effects that worked really, really well, and that really aided the storytelling.
We didn't want to add a lot of things that would take away from the scene. It wasn't going to be a scene about visual effects. It wasn't going to be a scene about fire and blood. It's a scene about characters, and it's a scene about intensity and pain and guilt and fear, and that was going to drive the scene.
3, 2, 1, go!
The Blood in the Stairs shot was a little bit of an homage to The Shining, and I thought it came out great. Sometimes, you know, you have the best of intentions, and if it just doesn't match the story, the shot looking great isn't a good enough reason for it to play. And, you know, maybe we'll recreate that for next season, because it was a nice little thing. I'd kind of like to do it.
We've been working with Ryan for a couple of years now, doing all his visual effects for him. Ryan does have a very specific vision, but he's collaborative and open to ideas, and basically where we can clearly contribute something that they can't capture in camera, he's totally interested in it and open to it.
We found that our role ended up being, we want to help tell the story, but we want to kind of make sure that we stay in the background and we let the story come through, you know, on its own.
You're wide awake.
The visual effects department and special effects makeup work very tightly together in many cases on a show like this.
When I first read the script, Ryan said, come to my office and read it. I don't want it going out. So I'm busily writing down every little area of what our responsibilities were going to be, and it was quite large. But I was up for the challenge. I was excited to read something that Ryan was inspired by. He was throwing out all these wonderful horror story references that, of course, I am a big fan of horror films, and so I knew exactly what he was talking about, exactly what he wanted.
Look what I got from Tinsley's studio today.
I'm not able to do that.
Moira is going to remove this part and spit it on the ground.
American Horror Story gave us the opportunity to do something that was so extravagant for characters that meant so much to the script. Visually, it's unpleasant and disturbing.
Come closer so I can get a good look at you. Ugh.
When I read it, I remember seeing that the character has burns over a lot of his body and is horribly disfigured, and so I figured that meant prosthetic makeup. But I actually enjoy it. I'm fascinated by the process. I'm fascinated by the craft of it. I get my mani-pedi later. It's great. It does begin to affect you. It begins to inform you. You begin to take on a strange characteristic because of it. And it's like any good costume. You put it on, it helps you transform. And I think this is really helping me transform. I love it.
I would say that it's an exploration of fear and loss, that it is about the choices we make that lure us into bad decisions and dark places versus the choices we make that keep us strong and keep us safe.
In a great horror story, people are going to die. It happens. And I think the key is to really care about the people that die.
Who you calling a pig?
People need to see what is going to happen next after just getting an event right in the face.
You want to know what happens next. Even the actors and the audience, that's one thing they have in common. They always want to know what happens next.
Go away, Tate! You're all I want!
I mean, that's how Ryan's shooting it. And he goes, that's the most messed up, or like, that's the scariest.
Could you maybe not look at me?
It's the good stuff. It's the good stuff.
Naughty boy.
Everything about the show is really well done. How could you not watch it?
Well, that's all very touching. Where the hell's the baby?
There are images that become almost iconic in that they remain with you for a long time.
Now what am I going to do with you?
Ryan is a visionary, and it's been amazing working with him because I literally find myself just sort of saying, okay, you just share with me what your vision is, and then let me do that.
We've tapped into his psyche and his writing and his creation, and I think we're all kind of occupying that world.
Take every great tradition of American horror and put them all together in a big ball. Boom.
This is what it does to you. This house.
Run.
A main title sequence has to be entertaining, and it has to elicit an emotional response from the audience.
There was some creepy stuff in there that just flashed by in a split second.
You want to get a rise out of people, or use whatever elements you can use.
They know that main title sequence tells them, get ready. This is what the show is. Ryan had pulled me into a meeting and said, I want to work on the main title sequence, and I think I want to use the team that did the main titles for 7.
I was invited by Alexis Woodall to come to Paramount and meet with Ryan.
Ryan said he just has that cinematic look about it, and it's so artistic, and I want this to feel like something that no one has ever seen on television before.
Title sequences have the utilitarian task of getting the people's names across. But in addition to just doing that, they can tell some kind of backstory for the show. You know, with American Horror Story, it's intended to, you know, set the tone and get you in the mood for what's going to happen.
You're not watching a pretty show about a dysfunctional family. You are watching a very scary show about a lot of things. And so I think it's all about setting the right tone.
The first time I met Ryan, we just sat there and riffed off things. What are these dark images that could foreshadow the show but not give too much away? During the conversation, he told me this old story about the abortionist and the murdering husband and the infantata. So I went to the set, I looked at the house, I walked around the house, I took photographs of details of the house. I like to try to put my head in what's going on and sort of go to that place. So I went into Ryan with all of these binders full of photographic reference and storyboard frames.
Kyle had brought a whole book of images from something called the Mutter Museum, which is this very macabre museum that was dedicated to human anomalies in jars and disfigured forms, and it's all sort of about how the human form can be so normal and then so abnormal in the same time and space.
And he said, that's interesting, that's not so interesting. But here's the thing, you know, he liked the board and he wanted to see something in motion. So we shot a lot of footage of the POV of the infantata, but Ryan was interested in this kind of tabletop thing with preserved fetuses and creatures in this old discarded lab that existed downstairs. But still the thing that kind of entertains me is this idea that all the pictures of all the little kids, they're sort of frozen in time, but they have to watch everything that goes on. In addition to all this history of the kids looking on and the portraits and the preserved material, there's things that are alive. So I wanted to have some legs go down the stairs. You know, it's like still shot, something moves. And then I think in the editorial process, it's more disturbing to just get a glimpse of something, but you need to be able to have those accents that are a little bit jarring. You know, Ryan talked a lot about music inspiration in the very first meeting. He talked about how important the music was to him. And so I told Gabriel Diaz, who was one of the editors here, find some other scary music.
The video editor for the main title, his name is Gabriel Diaz, and he's a friend of mine from a long time ago. And he had this song of mine that I wrote in 1999. And he thought it was perfect for it, so he included it.
So we'd watched several versions of the main title first pass that Kyle had done with several different cuts and several pieces of music. Kyle said, okay, let's play this one. And what this one was a piece, I believe it's called Creatura by Cesar.
And I thought that piece was more of just like a prolonged string of sound effects rather than a memorable melody. And I wasn't sure it was going to work, but when we put it up against it, I was like, oh wow, that is getting the emotional reaction that I wanted to get.
It was noisy and it was ugly and it had static and it had this loud, kind of shrieking quality to it.
I was interested in experimental music and how much you can distort and manipulate sound.
And Ryan and I looked at each other like, this is it. There's just no question. This is what the song is. But in the original piece of music, there was a sample that Cesar had slowed down and added all sorts of effects to, but he couldn't remember what song he had originally sampled it from.
There were samples in the music, and I slowed them down so they will sound more interesting to me.
Which unfortunately makes it illegal for us to use because we can't license it if we don't know what piece of music is in there. And so we had to essentially recreate the same piece of music. We started working with Charlie Clouser because our music supervisor, PJ Bloom, had suggested that Charlie might be the perfect fit to work with Cesar because he worked with 9 Inch Nails, and it sounded like what Cesar was sort of emulating.
So I was the keyboard player in the band 9 Inch Nails, and Ryan was very much in love with this demo version that they had. So I think a lot of what I was doing was trying to recapture what he loved about this earlier version.
This was very full circle. 9 Inch Nails inspires me to get into music and to look into experimental music, which now turns out to be something that he worked on. It's really great.
That we really trying to recapture the crusty and lumpy and kind of lovably out of time nature of this original demo that Caesar had done. That was kind of one of the most challenging parts, was to still make it feel screwed up and broken and kind of almost like it's an old wax cylinder recording that's not rotating correctly or something.
In the past, I've been kind of precious about nice, elegant type. And I didn't want to be so precious about the type. I wanted to just make the names big. I partly wanted to make the names big because I wanted to be able to cut to them quickly and have you read it.
My favorite note that Ryan gave and that I really stood behind was that at the time when we watched the first pass, the way the names come up, they just came up white against black, and they didn't really have any sense of decay or evolution to them. And Ryan said, I'm not sure what exactly I want, but wouldn't it be great if they could burn a little bit, or if they could change color, or if they could fall apart? And that was all Kyle needed.
We created the effect of the font burning by printing the typography on a surface that would melt. We tried painting something on top of a piece of metal and then heating the bottom of the metal, but it sort of just fizzled and smoked. So through a series of experiments, we came up with something that would be a little more bubbly and melty.
And I thought that was such a brilliant final touch. And the last thing I would say that I thought was a really great choice was ending the main title with the American Horror Story title card, as opposed to starting the main title with it. Because it starts and you don't know where you are and you don't know what you're seeing, and the last image you get is American Horror Story, and it sort of flames out or flickers out, and I thought that was a really great choice.
I wanted this title sequence to be a disturbing foreshadowing to the scary show.
I think this title sequence really hints at a lot of darkness yet to come, and I don't know that we've explored all the dark things that are yet to be revealed.
I think that the emotions that people feel when they watch it is they're both intrigued and a little bit disturbed, where they want to lean forward to find out what it is that they're seeing, but they don't want to see too much. It's sort of like when you're watching a scary movie and you cover your eyes with your hands, but you still peek through.
And I think that was a really cool thing about the visuals that were in the title, is that you don't know if you're seeing something that you're going to be shown or if you're seeing it through the character's eyes.
You know, I've read that people are frightened by the main title sequence, and I was like, excellent, you know, because I was trying to do something that would scare people.
Next stop on our tour of departed souls, the Murder House. We have saved the best for last. The Montgomery House, affectionately known as Murder House. This quaint Victorian has been the scene of some of the most horrible acts known to Los Angelenos in the last 90 years. Now, it frequently changes hands, and as a matter of fact, the current owners were known to have fled the house in the middle of the night. Now, they weren't the first to succumb to the evil that seems to ooze from every nook and cranny of Murder House. Now, normally, we don't get to see our murder mansions close up, but today we have a very rare opportunity. Who would like to take a peek? Okay, now, single file, everyone, no wandering off. We wouldn't want a member of the tour to be murdered or killed or mutilated. Just kidding. But you all did sign your releases, right? Right? The house was built in 1925 for Dr. Charles and Nora Montgomery and their infant son, Thaddeus. Dr. Montgomery was the doctor to the stars of his day, and Nora, his well-heeled socialite wife. Now, unfortunately, Dr. Montgomery had a penchant for alcohol and ether. This caused most of his clientele to leave him. Shall we? Come on. The good doctor and Nora resorted to performing back alley abortions just to make ends meet. Now, down these very stairs are where these very acts occurred, along with other perversions of science. This way. In 1926, their beloved Thaddeus was kidnapped. He eventually returned home, but diced up and pickled in several specimen jars. Dr. Montgomery couldn't let the dead lie, and he brought something back to life, the sight of which drove Nora mad. She killed her husband, her beloved son Thaddeus, or what was left of him, and herself. For more tales of woe, onward and upward. Here you go. Watch your steps. This isn't a self-guided tour, no lollygagging. Let's go. The Montgomerys weren't the only ones who suffered here. Take the Harveys. Now, Larry Harvey was convinced that the house was possessed, when in reality it was the love of another woman that possessed Mr. Harvey. Now, tragically, his spurned wife torched herself and their 2 daughters in this house. Now, rumor has it that the deranged son of Mr. Harvey's beloved mistress later torched Mr. Harvey, causing him to have burns over most of his body, his face, hands, everything. Oh, and the deranged son, he went on a killing rampage, murdering 5 high school students, was tracked back to this very house and shot by the SWAT team. Ain't karma a bitch? Now, you want to see something really scary? Come on. We're all here? Good. Now, the thing that's really scary about this kitchen, how much it cost to renovate it. But it is loaded with all the latest appliances to slice, dice, and julienne. Much like the young woman Elizabeth Short, known famously as the Black Dahlia, who was found severed in half. Now, we can't prove it, but it's believed that the murder happened in this house. Cookie? Let's go. Now, at one point, the house was a home for young nurses. Now, unfortunately for 2 of those angels of mercy, the specter of death still held dominion over the house. The first was found drowned in a bathtub. The second was hogtied and stabbed repeatedly in this very room. Now, you may know it as the R. Franklin Massacre. Now, R. Franklin was a man not that dissimilar from another sociopath, Richard Speck. There's more gore in store, folks, so let's get going. Come on. I can't forget the redheaded twins. 2 10-year-olds, the year 1978. They were found dead in the house, their throats ripped open. Really nasty mess. This way. So as you can tell, the history of the house is not a pretty one. One of the recent owners, a couple, were found dead in this room. A lover spat turned murder-suicide. Coincidence? You be the judge. But no one seems to want to stay here very long, and you can't blame them. It is kind of creepy, isn't it? So the house is back on the market. Any takers? I didn't think so. So much for California full disclosure laws, huh? All right, that's the end of our tour. Let's head back to the bus. Everybody stick together. No dawdling. Thank you. Thank you. Stick together, people. All right, I think we have everybody. Everyone has their buddy, right? Okay, this way to the bus. All right, come on.
I am stuck here like the others, like you. We died in here, and for whatever reason, we can't leave.
What are you implying? That you're dead?
I'm not implying it, I'm saying it. Yeah, dead. Dead as disco.
Can I help you?
I'm Laura O'Hara. I'm the housekeeper.
Well, it's a very interesting conceit that this woman be a younger person and an older person. I just love it.
If you don't mind, I'd like to take a longer lunch than usual. I'm quite shaken.
There have been scenes where I've been there and then Alex has been there. And we've sort of been in the same mindset in the scene. But then there are other scenes where that hasn't been the case. It's kind of wiggy.
Nice to meet you.
That's my cab.
I'll use the lavatory first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Francis and I, we have this same, and I don't know what it is. It's the rhythm of speech, and it wasn't something that we really worked on. It sort of just happened.
Cheating on one's pregnant wife qualifies as an unspeakable criminal act. It's on a par with murder.
Ryan said to me one day that Moira was Vivian's guide, kind of a protector for her.
You need to get out while you still can.
I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Our secret is safe.
What secret?
The way you look at me, you have a diseased mind, Dr. Harmon.
The costume puts me in character. It's very interesting to find that extreme sexuality, because it is very extreme.
What did you see?
Nothing at all, if anyone should ask. I'm very discreet.
I am not a sex pot at all. I mean, look, I'm more of a dork than anything.
Action!
It takes some work for me to get into character. You know, she has a few oral situations, and those scenes were tricky for me to do, definitely.
Congratulations, Dr. Harmon.
It's a big deal to do scenes with her, and the writing is great, so it's wonderful to use those words and, bring the scenes to life.
You're finally beginning to see things as they are.
I think that ultimately Moira now is basically Frances. She's, she was killed in the house, and she's aged as she would have if she was alive today.
It's the most beautiful baby I've ever seen.
Hey, bitches. You get all that slime off my baby yet?
I thought I was only going to be in, like 3 or 4 episodes, and I certainly didn't know my character was going to die.
You know what I'd love? A big, thick, juicy...
I mean, it was pretty awesome the way Hayden died, because sort of the most fun roles are the ghosts, because you get to do crazy things.
I think I'm done spitting up the blood and the teeth, so that's good. I'm not a fan of the taste of that fake blood. I don't like it.
And action!
Sometimes it's hard, because you don't know how does a ghost act, and what's going to be too much, what's going to seem real and honest.
And cut.
When I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's very clever to show us sort of like, when people say they experience hauntings or whatever in houses and how things move and stuff. I liked that scene where Dylan's character sees the book fall and he doesn't see me, but I'm standing right there. All those things I thought were really clever.
I had a really good time.
That's one of the things that I loved about it, was that Hayden sort of goes from being sweet to being kind of crazy and unpredictable, and then vulnerable, and then like a child, and then can go and kill someone, which is so much fun to play.
Okay, start laughing, boys, and action.
I'm excited. So excited.
We just want to release her anger on everything and anyone in our way. We just create mischief in the house and havoc and just destroy everything. That's like every 13, 12-year-old kid's dream. And also it sets the mood of the basement also. It kind of tells that the basement is like the creepiest part of the house. I mean, every time someone goes into the basement in the show, something happens. Like Violet goes down, Bo rolls the ball, Larry goes down, he sees his like wife and kids like all burned and stuff. We go down, we get killed by the infantata which lurks down there. We see the jars, it's really creepy.
Damn it, Charles, are you down in the basement again? My husband, Charles Montgomery, he's endlessly in the basement, and I never go down there. I find that what he's been doing is making these sort of horrible creatures.
I tried to nurse him, but it wasn't milk he was craving.
I would say that's the straw that really breaks Nora's back.
That thing upstairs, it's not human. I tried to kill it. No, I tried. I stabbed it with a letter opener, but it clung to life, Charlie. No.
I think we are there to set the house is sort of damned in a way. You know, the people who started this house were deeply damaged. And so these horrific acts of violence started with the origins of this house.
I will not permit another failure in this house. Save the baby.
But then for Nora also, the loss of her baby and the fixation she then has on finding her baby, and then the idea that is introduced to her that she can get another baby becomes an absolute obsession.
We should take those babies. One for you, one for me. We could do that?
She knows she's missing something. She barely knows what it is. It's just a total disintegration.
I'm not dead. Then how do you explain this, sweetheart?
I've become very accustomed to my bullet hole. They've named it over in the hair and makeup trailer.
She seems so sad. I've decided to give her a smile that will last forever.
For me, one of the more challenging things was in the beginning, negotiating the ether, like how drugged he was. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. So I looked at the internet to see what the effects of ether would be, because I had no idea. And I saw that when, I don't know if it's true, because God knows most of what you read on the internet is probably incorrect. But I read that the inhalation of the fumes is very intense and that people cough a lot. So, yeah, so I picked that little tidbit up.
What happened to you?
I'm hurt and needing some help. I thought it would be a fun thing to do, and I've never played a villain before, so that was kind of exciting. And you, Maria, he saved you for last.
Our Franklin was the first, before Manson. He changed the culture.
I actually auditioned for the Fiona role and then got cast in Bianca but didn't know anything about it. So I went in for my first special effects fitting and they were like, yeah, so that scene where you're chopped in half by the elevator. I'm like, what? Wait, huh? The cupcakes scene was also quite fun.
This isn't right.
I had to talk to the special effects and they're like, so what do you prefer to barf? What kind of thing? And I was like, well, the last time I had a barf on TV, we just used oatmeal. They had to mix in the cupcake. It was a little gnarly.
You have to put someone under the water for 3 minutes until they lose consciousness. The brain begins to die from oxygen deprivation. Yeah, this is my first time playing a homicidal maniac. And I am not a homicidal maniac in my everyday life. So it was a bit of a stretch, which made it fun. Well, I believe I am a victim of the infantata, although we don't see that happen in the episode. They just find me with my throat ripped out.
Next thing we know, I'm getting axed in the stomach. And then just probably one of the best scenes ever. I slowly, bloodily walk down the hallway, dragging my hand, and that's the last we see of Bianca. And Moira will definitely have quite a cleaning job ahead of her. I don't think she'll appreciate it, but...
Can I ask you a question?
Is it pillow talk?
I don't know what that means.
No, of course you don't.
I heard I had an audition for this new project, and I went in, it was just a few lines, and then they asked me to take my shirt off. And that was it.
Whoa, Constance was right. Now I'm never gonna be famous.
That's not necessarily true.
Having the Black Dahlia come into play, you know, when I was murdered and was ready to have them cut me all up and stick me out there and be the new Dahlia. And I got my fame.
We're sort of called the Breakfast Club, like the Dead Breakfast Club.
What the hell, dude?
Somebody's shooting up the school.
The Breakfast Club from the zombie world, you know?
And action, go, go!
The shooting scene itself, I mean, I obviously wouldn't know, but I truly thought it was very much how it would be. I thought it was underplayed, but almost in a way that it was more intense.
Hey!
There were live guns on set. They had a real shotgun. I got to, you know, open it up, look inside, make sure that, you know, it wasn't loaded. Having a real gun pointed at you can absolutely help your acting, but I wouldn't always suggest it. I want to be a better actor, so here, just load this up and point it at me so I look scared. Like, no.
The way that they shot it was really interesting. The fact that you don't see Tate until the very end, that reveal is so much more poignant.
Please! People are not scared of me on the set. No, they're not scared of me. My favorite part of playing Tate is I think he's crazy. So he's like always yelling or is emotional or, you know, confused and trying to figure stuff out like that. And that's always fun stuff for an actor to play.
And action!
Just got shot 17 times by the man. Shot down by the man. Yeah, it's cool.
The roses have whitefly. Jesus, what an eyesore.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm one half of the duo that owned the house prior to Ben and Vivian, and my partner is played by the one and only Zach Quinto.
Style is so important.
It's everything.
The house does prey upon vulnerabilities. I think Patrick just began to feel the walls close in.
You know what? I am.
You are what?
Screwing my trainer. You know what else? He's a power bottom. He loves it.
Because they never worked out their stuff in life, they're doomed to repeat it in death.
I am serious. I hate how this feels against my skin. Take it off so we can watch Rachel Zoe without me worrying about you passing out.
I love the presence of the Rubber Man. The Rubber Man suit was introduced as this sexual aid, really, into this complicated Chad-Pat relationship.
Where are you going? Out. And for the record, I like leather, not latex.
You know what's amazing about that suit is it smells like, well, it's latex. And so you get up close to that suit and it's just, oh man, this is a pretty formidable scent here.
What the hell did you do to her?
That was a really fun fight to shoot. They had a great stunt guy named Josh Wood, he's the guy who's tumbling down the stairs, and he's the guy who helps make me look good. But I learned a lot from watching him. He just gets thrown around, and then I get thrown around, and you know, the director had a really seamless and beautiful way of bringing it all together. You know, death by poker is something I don't ever think I'll be able to live down.
Sort of the fun of the show is you find out all these new rules or things that aren't rules.
Well, there are some rules in the world of the ghosts that live in this house.
When you die in the house as a ghost, you can't leave the house. You're trapped.
Well, Moira, she's buried in the backyard, unless something happens to the bones in the backyard or the rules of the game. And Moira's here for a while.
Excuse me, ma'am. I'm hurt. Oh my God. I'm needing some help. I was in the front yard briefly, but I don't think I can go so much further than that.
Hey, you punk!
Happy Halloween, asshole! The thing about being a ghost in the house or dying on the property is that if you die, then you're pretty much safe on the show, and then you're not gonna leave. That's the best part about it.
I was very excited when I found out my character was getting murdered in the house, because that meant I would get to stick around a little bit.
So the house is pretty crowded.
The house at this point is chock full of ghosts, and they all have to cohabitate together.
Is this part of the Halloween act? Because, I mean, the makeup, it's chilling, but the performance...
At Halloween, that is basically when the dead in the show can walk amongst the living. Hopefully it'll get to next year's Halloween, it'll come prancing out again, like, I'm back.
Ghosts can drink, ghosts can fight, they can bleed, they heal up right away.
You want anything from the kitchen?
It's not like you always have to be seen, but when you feel like you want to show yourself, that's when they can see you. It's totally up to you, not the person that's alive.
Ghosts kill people in the house. That's clearly not off limits.
Yeah, you're in danger if you're a human being in the house because they can do a lot of things.
She has sex with people that aren't ghosts.
I know firsthand you can have sex.
I love what you've done with this kitchen. She tortures people and haunts people, so, I mean, I don't really know. I don't think there's very many rules for us.
We'll make sure he's off the property before he expires. I wouldn't care to encounter his carcass ever again.
I'm not sure what all the rules are, but I'm sure if they need to get rid of a rule, they can always do that too.
Were you going to drag him out of here, Casper?
I could certainly make it easier.
The show gives the audience a great look at what might happen if there were a bunch of spirits, locked into one place together, and, how they might carry on their day. It's really cool.
Another poor family's just going to move in here. Suckers will have no idea what they're in for.
And we know exactly what to do.